The planning system in Ireland, I find, is actually very much what I experienced here. The underlying principles which apply are almost identical. You know, I went in 2002, I went to a 2-day course on planning law, and I sat there listening to this lot, and you know, I could have closed my eyes and forget the accents and forget where I was. The arguments, the principles, the way they treat amenity, you know, accessibility, you know, all the kind of issues were, in my mind, virtually identical to what I'd experienced here. But it wasn't just in the field of the law. About 2 months after I arrived in Ireland, my daughter at school had another girlfriend, and the parent of my daughter's girlfriend said, "Do you want to come to a protest meeting?" Yes, absolutely no hesitation. See what a protest meeting's like in Ireland, you see. So this is a little, what it was all about was a planning application in for a disused quarry, like right on the edge of a little village. The village might have had, I don't know, 1,000 people or something, you know, a little village out in the countryside. And planning application was to use the disused quarry as a builder's rubble site. The local village were up and on it. So this is what the protest meeting was all about. And so I go along there, and I can, you know, you can't go to a protest meeting without in the pub beforehand having a pint, you see. So there I am sitting with this father, his name is Percy, sitting having a pint, and he used the word blow-in once, and I'd never heard the word before, and I let it go, you know, and it was a description of himself as a blow-in, you see. And he used it a second time. I said, "Percy, what's a blow-in?" And he said, "It's somebody who's not from the local area." Newcomer, not from the local area. So I said to Percy, I said, "But I thought you'd been here in this village for 23 years. "Oh yes," he said. Not only that, his parents and his grandparents weren't born there. Can you believe it? Anyway, so he said, "Yeah, that's not from the local area." So I said to Percy, "Percy, where were you born?" He says, 16 miles down the road. He's a foreigner in this village because he was born 16 miles down the road. Now, there's actually something in that little story, because one of the things about Ireland, and it's in the psyche of the people, and it plays itself out into the way planning systems and all sorts of things, the whole political system works, is localism. It's an extreme version of localism. Like, I've never experienced anything like that in my life, living here, because we very mobile, you know, you might be in Tonga and then you end up in somewhere else, and you know, like, people move. It's not the perception in Ireland. It's extreme localism, and that plays itself out into the way planning works, the way the political system works, the way councillors look at issues when they're on the local council. You know, there would be my parish. You know, I'm not interested in anything. My parish. You know, the parish is like nothing. You know, it's some piddly little area. So there's this extreme localism, and it generalizes to the difficulty at the political level of taking a bigger perspective and a longer term perspective. And that localism shapes a whole lot of decisions. That's just more by way of background. The way the planning system works is that we have a national spatial strategy, which is the responsibility of this planning section that I'm in nationally. So we have an NSS, National Spatial Strategy. We then have what we call regional planning guidelines, RPGs, which have to fit with the NSS. I'm sure you know what's coming. under that we have city and county plans, which have to fit with the RPGs, and below that we have local area plans, LAPs. So there's this kind of hierarchy sitting there of plans. The NSS, which is about to be, in fact this morning there's a meeting going on back in Dublin of people looking at NSS version 2. But the NSS at the moment, the current one, which is adopted in 2002, published in 2002, it is essentially about trying to get more balanced regional development. Because in Ireland, the pattern of development is skewed, with Dublin, a pinnacle, as it were, and things happening there. And then there's the rest of Ireland. But you do get other cities like Cork, Limerick, Galway, a place called Waterford, which are their own local sort of development nodes. But Dublin kind of swamps the system, everything. So the one issue of more balanced regional development is kind of Dublin versus the rest. But then in the rest of the country, it's to try and get more balance between those other cities and more or less the rural kind of areas. So one of the key concepts in the NSS is more balanced regional development. Now,
can I just ask a question? Because many countries will have this council, we call it the network or system or hierarchy of plans. Now, does it dictate its way from the top all the way down and people have to fit in with a higher? Or is there an understanding that when the more detailed work occurs lower down, that in time it has an influence back up the line? Or does it work only in one direction?
It's essentially one direction, top down. Ireland is a very centralized country. It's so small. It's got a population of 4.6 million, which is the whole country, which is like nothing.
It's teeny. It's just slightly bigger than Intercredi.
Yeah,
This is about the same.
is it the same?
Well, they reckon it's just under 4 million a year, but that's the authorities. I'm sure there's more than that.
Oh yeah.
The area of Ireland is 70,000 square
But the reason I asked that,
kilometers.
sorry,
KwaZulu-Natal is 90,000, so the area is pretty much the same.
but the reason I asked that because on the one hand you're talking about this kind of sort of local dimension to the exercise, and yet you're saying you've got this kind of broad top down. I would have thought that given that very local thing is that when people start to do more detailed plans and they do finer grained analysis, it must in turn influence some adjustment up the line, down the line. So these kind of systems actually work in two, well they should be working in two directions. Very broad scale, and then when they get work to detail in turn they ought to be making some adjustment up the line. But what you're saying is because of this high level of centralization, there's very little working its way backwards.
It does, but probably more through the political system than through the official planning mindset of the system.
Would have been the other way around.
Now, you see, the pressure from the political side of things is to have more balance, and there's quite a strong anti-Dublin feeling out there beyond Dublin, and people feel kind of not put down, but dominated
by the city,
by Dublin, and it's Dublin, and in fact they even go so far as to say it's Dublin 4, which is a suburb of Dublin, which has got the elite of the elite living in it, the most kind of educated elite, everybody's university, all that kind of stuff. So there's quite a strong anti-Dublin feeling, and that plays itself back through the political structures, which then in turn influence the way people like us, people in our planning section in Dublin, the way we kind of frame things. You've got to be sensitive to the political system. So at the
Sorry, but why Dublin? Why anti-Dublin?
Because it's perceived to be dominant in a centralized, essentially a centralized governmental framework. So it seemed to be different. There's sort of words that are used for Dubliners and other people from outside of Dublin, and it's when you have a fairly centralised kind of structure to government, there's always people out there who feel that they're being hard done by, they're not getting the resources and all the rest of it.